GateDrop.com AMA Nationals review for 2022, the 50th anniversary of the Lucas Oil Pro Motocross Series, Andy, and it's looking like one of the best series in the 50-year history. And Tony Cairoli headlining coming out of retirement, although he's only been retired a couple of months. Ryan Dungey coming out of retirement after 4 or 5 years, maybe it is now. Plus you have Eli Tomac fresh off a Supercross title, and Dylan Ferrandis coming back to defend his outdoor title. A rejuvenated Jason Anderson, Chase Sexton, and that's only a handful of riders to mention. It's looking like one heck of a series in the 450 class.
Absolutely. Always do look forward to the AMA Nationals season kicking off, the great outdoors. But I think this season going into it is probably the most hype going into the season that I can remember. It's quite a lot of storylines, but we'll have to just see how the racing pans out the first couple of rounds to see what way the championship goes. Because even though there's quite a lot of good riders, a lot of it could still depend on what Eli Tomac's like, what's his knee like, and what his form's like. Because if he's just came off the back of the best Supercross season to date, and you would still associate Eli Tomac more of a motocross rider. So if he's 100% feeling good, he could still wax everybody on his day. So it is going to be interesting to see how it all shapes up. But certainly going into the first round, a lot of unknowns, and it should shape up for some good racing at Pala.
Yeah, and we'll maybe start with Eli Tomac. Coming into maybe a month ago, you were thinking Tomac could just dominate this series, especially with no Jeffrey Hurlings. But this knee injury kind of creates a question mark and maybe opens the door for the likes of Dylan Ferrandis, who's had time to heal up from his injuries. And who knows, maybe even a Cairoli or a Dungey if Cairoli does the full series. And we know now that Dungey wants to do the full series, and he's explicitly said he wants to win this title. So he's coming in with big goals. But Eli Tomac has said he's rode the bike outdoors and feels very comfortable on it, which is pretty ominous for everyone who's seen him in Supercross. But again, this knee, the track gets rough, a lot of ruts usually in America as well. If he tweaks that again, could that be him done for the season?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, it's a bit of an unknown at the moment, but once the racing kicks off this weekend, we'll know where everyone is, and I think they'll probably all just want the first round out of the way to see where they are, and then focus on improving after that. But yeah, it should be interesting. Pala actually is usually a bit of a speedway, but I remember last year for the first round it actually did get rough. So Cairoli especially, and the likes of Ferrandis will probably want it to get the rougher the better for them guys, I think. Whereas Americans, when it comes to motocross, are more used to pin it to win it style track. So it'll be interesting to see what way the track shapes up for the season opener.
So are we both agreeing then that Tomac is favourite despite that injury? Are you going Dylan?
Well, I'll have to see what he's like after the first round. I mean, he's favourite if he's 100%.
Yeah,
I would say. But I still think if he is 100%, probably the one guy to stop him is probably going to be Dylan Ferrandis. I think it's between those two, really. A lot of unknowns with the other riders, and I think Dylan, even though he didn't finish the Supercross season, has been on the bike for quite a while now, and similar to Tomac, he's more of a motocross kind of guy, and he was unbelievable last season. So I think it's between those two. But if Eli Tomac's knee he's feeling good with his knee, I think he is the favourite. Yeah.
And for Dylan, it might be similar, especially if Eli is on form. He's not going to be able to afford to get those bad starts like he did in Supercross last year. In motocross, at times he was able to come from the back, although his starts weren't too bad compared to normal. This year, again, if he wants to beat Eli, it could be the guy who wins between those two. It could be actually come down to starts, although, of course, we've seen Eli rip through the field, especially that last 10 minutes. But then we'll have another guy this year, Antonio Cairoli. Yes, he's 36, coming 37, which is unbelievable, but he's also good late in the race. And for me, being from Italy, with the heat that he's used to, he's always been good in the heat. I don't think that might affect him as much as it does other Europeans coming over. So if he's again, the slight indecisiveness regarding Cairoli is he really there for the full series? Is he just there to have fun? How serious is he taking it? Because he doesn't always say that he's what he really wants to do. He might just play down the pressure a wee bit and do it for an experience. But if Cairoli's in for the full season, and he's in secretly to try and win this title. Starts and late race charges are usually his forte, so that could maybe eventually be something that Tomac and Ferrandis have to watch out for.
Yeah, well, I think at the moment we just need to take it for what it is. Cairoli's in to do the first two, and then he says towards the end of the season he might do a couple, as prep for the Motocross Nations. But I do think, it'll depend on the results the first two. Obviously, if he gets 2 podiums or something like that, I could see him staying on racing the whole championship. But is that going to happen? Is it likely to happen? I think we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, as you touched on, I think you're right with the heat. I think the biggest thing Cairoli's going to have to adapt to is probably the tracks. He's used to riding very gnarly and rough tracks. And
2 days.
In AMA, the tracks are a lot more fast and not quite as technical. And yeah, I think that's going to be the challenging bit for him. But his starts are usually quite good. So that's unlike Ferrandis. So that's one thing he has got going for him. So
even Eli will be interesting. Although Tomac starts have improved slightly on the Star Yamaha. Well, the only concern I have for a Cairoli, if he is on good form enough to be towards the front, at the GPs the last season and maybe the season before, his opening laps, the first 2-3 laps, it took him a while to find his true pace. Now, is that age? He's not just able to go into that high intensity straight away, because America's known the first 10 minutes to be their most intense part of the race. Usually he comes on strong at the end. We saw that even last year in the Grand Prix. The fitness usually isn't a problem for him. But with the intensity the Americans usually have in the top 10, for the first 10 minutes, and even if you get start 8, that's pretty intense. Will Cairoli have enough intensity at the start of those races on tracks he's not familiar with? And don't forget, it's only really a 1-day format, unless he does press day on the Friday or whatever. He's only going to have 2 10 or 15-minute practice sessions to figure the track out, figure his bike setup out. And that can be a big disadvantage for a rider in the first year in the Nationals. But all in all for Cairoli, after whatever decade and a half of Grand Prix races or longer, he's a new series. He almost doesn't have pressure because he's already one of the greatest of all time. Maybe the greatest, depending on who you ask, but certainly he's in that conversation with Everts and Carmichael and McGrath and Bale. And now it's almost fun, so he's going to have less pressure. He's going to be excited to race a new series, a series he's always wanted to race before he retires, and he's going to do it. It's just we're still a wee bit iffy on how prepared will he be, but if he is prepared, I think a top 5 certainly isn't out of the equation in these first 2 rounds. And then, as you said, if he is getting the results, will he stay on and see that title might be possible?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the intensity there. To be honest, I don't think he really struggled that much with the intensity. Obviously, if Tomac gets the whole shot, he might struggle to stay with him. But, last year MXGP, we had Hurlings, we had Geiser, we had Fevre, and we had Sear and guys like that. And that was unbelievable intensity. AMA will be good, but I don't think it'll be quite that fast at the front, with the exception of maybe Tomac. But for me, it's just about how fast and how rough or not rough the tracks are. That might be the challenge. But I mean, I think he'll be top 6 in the first 2 rounds. But if he's 5th and 6th, he still might not do rounds 3 and continue on with the rest of the season. Then I think for that he'll probably have to get at least 1 podium, and I'm not sure if he'll get on the podium, but I don't think he'll be far away, to be honest.
I think that's maybe the most exciting part of the first round. But as well as that, you have Ryan Dungey coming back. And with Ryan, he's always been consistent for me. Maybe never had the top end raw speed that a Cairoli could produce or Villapoto, but he was always smart and he was always consistent and he was still always fast. If he still has close to that speed, which he seems to think he does, we know he's been working probably for the last 3 months at least. He said he loves the bike. If his expectations are to win, you would imagine that on terms of pace, he's consulted other riders' lap times, and he feels he isn't far away. Now, racing's a completely different ballgame. The intensity, the nerves behind the gate again, outdoors in that humidity. But if anyone can do it probably is Ryan Dungey, because he loves physical training even when he's not a professional. And if he can get through the first 2 rounds, okay, in around top 5, even a couple of top 10s early, I could see him just getting better and better throughout the season, and then it could be up to how consistent the initial front runners are. Tomac's knee, Dylan starts, can he avoid injury? Then you're down to probably Jason Anderson, who's never won an overall before, although he's in really good form. Chase Sexton's fast but crashes, and Ken Roxon, question marks with his health, who we'll get on to next. So for Dungey, you're probably looking at maybe survival's the wrong term for the first 2 rounds, but showing yourself you're not far away and then gradually picking up the pace going forward. And you just don't know. This sport, especially outdoors in America, can be a bit unpredictable at times. He might not be far away towards the end of the season.
Yeah, for me, Dungey's an intriguing one, and it's maybe the biggest unknown just because he hasn't raced in 5 years. But listening to his recent comments, he must feel good because he's talking about racing the full championship and winning. So for somebody that hasn't raced in 5 years to be saying that, they must feel good at the practice tracker. Because if he comes out and finishes 10th or 11th the first round, that's certainly not going to be what he's expecting, going by his comments. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. When I first heard he was coming out of retirement, to be honest, I didn't think he was going to be all that competitive. I thought maybe, top 12 on a good day, top 8. But, if you think about it, we're already missing a couple of riders. There's no Cooper Webb, there's no Malcolm Stewart, there's no Max Anstey at the minute. So that's 3 guys already, and Mo Musquin either. So that's him up a few positions already, and there'll be more injuries. So I think there's no reason why he won't be top 10 at the first couple of rounds, and then as more guys gets injured, he's very, very dedicated, as I know, and he'll definitely put the hard work in, so he could improve quickly. I think he'll be one that just wants the first round done and dusted to see where he is and then work from there, but certainly will be interesting. I still don't think he'll be top 5 unless he gets 2 unbelievable starts.
First round, first 2 rounds, you mean?
Yeah. First 2 rounds. Obviously, he has this talent where if he does get the starts, he'll be able to maybe follow those guys. Yeah. But I'm thinking he'll be maybe 6 to 10, somewhere like that, possibly. Because you have to remember there's guys like Roxon, Barsha, Anderson. Can we really expect him to beat those guys after not racing for 5 years?
I think a normal rider who isn't as dedicated as Dungey would probably say no, but like you, I kind of thought he'd maybe been around top 10. He just wants to race motocross again. But hearing his comments,
I mean for the first round, do you think he'll beat those 3 though? Obviously, as the season continues, he'll probably be in. But for the first round,
maybe start could dictate it. I don't know if he, as you said, I think if he gets away at top 3, top 5, he might not be. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. So if he can get into that pace, he sounded a lot more confident and ambitious on, I think it was the Pulp MX show, than I was expecting him to. So he must feel like it's still there and the pace and everything he has is still there. So I think if he gets away, he might be more competitive than what I was initially expecting. My expectations for him have actually risen following hearing the details of that interview and how long it sounds like this has been in the works and he's been preparing for it.
Yes, same as me then, really, because like I say, I thought maybe top 12 when I first heard the announcement, but I'm starting to think now he'll probably do a bit better. But I think for the first round, he'll probably be between 6 to 10. That's my prediction, but I could be totally wrong. That's what I say. I think for me, it's the biggest unknown just because he hasn't raced in 5 years. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't get arm pump.
Right, we're on to our third unknown in a row, Ken Roxon.
Jeez.
Yet again, I mean, you've seen it with Dungey. We know what he can do. We've seen it with Cairoli, obviously. Even last year, we've seen what he can do. We're still a bit unsure about what percentage of their absolute best we're going to see. But Ken Roxon's actually in that same conversation. We know he's the talent to win races. He sounds like he isn't completely sure where his health is right now, which means no one can really be sure. And even he comes out at Palo, which is a drier heat usually because it's California. When he goes back east into that humidity, is that what could catch him out and drain his body again and make him devoid of energy, and he mightn't even last the season? You just don't know with Ken Roxon. But it looks like he feels better than he did going into Supercross. So hopefully, and we know he usually starts seasons strong, but it's the longevity of it it's still a complete question mark for Ken Roxon.
Well, this is it, and I think it's worth pointing out 2 30-minute motos at motocross is certainly a lot more physically demanding than a 20-lap
Yeah.
supercross race. So there's that side of it too. But Ken Roxon, it really wouldn't surprise me if he comes into this season, shocks everybody, and goes 1-1 at the first round. Because when you talk about talent, he's probably the most talented rider there. But as everybody's seen this last 2 or 3 years, on any given day he can win. But he tends to start championships quite quick. But
Yeah.
then one setback, and it just sort of seems to be a domino effect. So it will be interesting. I think for Roxon, the important thing is to get his career back on track. Is just trying to be consistent during this AMA national season, and maybe not go for the championship win or anything like that. But if he's consistently always in the top five, I think that would be a very good championship for Ken Roxon, to be honest. Because in Supercross, he's been anything but consistent. He's maybe won 1 week, and then the next week he's been 10th. So I think consistency for me is the big thing. But like I say, I really wouldn't be surprised if he came out and waxed everybody at the first round, because when it comes to talent, I'm not sure there's any rider behind that AMA national start gate that's got more talent than Roxon, apart from maybe Cairoli. But as we touched on earlier, he's 36 now. So
the interesting contrast could be with Ken Roxon, great starter usually, sort of shoots out real quick, it finds his pace really early. But with Cairoli, with Dungey, with Tomac, even with Dylan Ferrandis, who starts aren't the great, those four tend to come on strong in the last 10 to 15 minutes. So I wonder if you're going to see a kind of retraction in pace from Ken Roxon as those four start really hitting their stride coming late on in the race, especially the last 10 minutes of these races. It could be pretty exciting if those four are really finding their pace, and you have the likes of a Chase Sexton, it's really quick early, and a Ken Roxon trying to gap everyone at the start of the race, almost like a cycle race, with the long distance people coming on good at the end with their sprint finish.
Yeah, potentially. Although what I would say is, at the first couple of rounds, I don't think those other riders will be too worried about Roxon, because they've seen what's happened this last few years. But if by round 3 or round 4, round 5, he's still at the front, then that's when they're going to have to worry about him and try and beat him. But I think for the first round or the first couple of rounds, if Roxon's having an unbelievable day, and he shows that unbeatable form, I don't think the other riders will be too worried, just because the last couple of years have went for him. But certainly if he like I said, if he can consistently show that speed at the front, then they will have to start and take him seriously. But I just hope for Ken Roxon's sake he can get himself sorted together, because it's quite sad, watching him riding around Supercross, maybe finishing 10th 1 week, because there's no way Ken Roxon should be battling for 10th. Let's be honest, especially with the talent he has.
Yeah, and if he is again this summer, you'd wonder how long his career is going to go on for. He did admit when he was pretty low during and after Supercross this winter, he did wonder if he would be able to race again, in terms of, can I race properly again and ride to my level? So in the back of his mind, that's got to be still there if outdoors doesn't go well, and if he's still looking for a contract next year too. So that's another thing to keep an eye on in terms of how good his performances can be in relation to his health, because he hasn't forgotten how to ride a bike. It's just everything else seems to have caught up on him. Here's a few riders for you: Chase Sexton, Jason Anderson, Justin Barcia. Do you see any of those being a real title contender? For me, Anderson might be able to be in and around there as well as Chase Sexton, but I'm not sure about Barcia.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Barcia either. I think for me, if they both last the season, for me, Sexton's the better motocross rider, but that's his problem. He can never seem to last the season, or he makes, rookie mistakes.
He has mistakes.
So Anderson will probably be more the consistent. I definitely, if I was paying money to watch one of those riders race, I think it would be Sexton for me. I think he's got a fantastic style. For me, when you watch him race motocross, he's got more of a European style, actually. Smooth, great to watch on the bike, and actually has good throttle control. Anderson by no means hasn't got a bad style. He's still good to watch, but I really do enjoy watching Chase Sexton. So I think if Sexton lasts the season, I think he'll have the better results. But that's the big question mark with Sexton, unfortunately. But hopefully he can.
Sexton is starting to remind me of Ezra Lusk. You probably don't remember Ezra Lusk.
I do.
But he had a great style, was really fast, was McGrath's closest competitor for a while, moved to Honda and was their main man, which Sexton's kind of becoming now with what's happened to Roxon. But while he had the speed, he had the style, he had the technique, he always made mistakes at the wrong time. And Sexton, while he's still young, and hopefully these mistakes will stop, it's starting to become a pattern in year 2, and you just wonder if this is the way he's going to be, or if he's going to be able to figure out and be a multi-time 450 champion. Ezra Lusk was never able to do it, even though he had the speed for a good 4 or 5 years. He kept crashing at the worst moments, while Jeremy McGrath was always calm and cool and was able to seal those championships. And outdoors, it was the same. It was Ricky Carmichael, Greg Albertine, and Doug Henry who were winning those championships when it was maybe Lusk's time to win. He was never able to quite do it. And I'm starting to wonder, although it's maybe a bit early, is Chase Sexton going to be in that mold? Because next we're going to have Jet Lawrence and maybe Hunter Lawrence coming through as the next generation after him. So he might have a smaller window than normal to try and win these titles.
Yeah, well, I still don't see him being a championship threat, I have to say. I think, a good day for him will be a podium.
I think he'll win motos.
Do you think so?
I think he'll win at least one, but I don't know about the consistency.
Yeah, well, that's possible, but I'm just thinking to start the season, I'd be very surprised if he won at the first 2 or 3 rounds, but obviously as we get into the championship, winning is possible, but I think a podium would be a good day. Definitely don't see him being a championship contender, I have to say, with Tomac and Ferranda, so I do think they'll be too fast for him, but you never know. But I think the main thing for Sexton is just to try and last the season and maybe take a third or take a second instead of going for the win, because I think it is important, as you pointed out, just for him to last the season. But it will be interesting. Another rider I'm looking forward to seeing, actually, and Sexton could maybe end up being a bit like him in terms of style on the 450, is Christian Craig. But Craig's had sort of a strange career because he's obviously went back and raced to 250, but and he's one of the oldest guys now. But I actually feel like he's got the riding style that suits a 450 much better. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does in the 450 class on the Star Yamaha as well. He could actually be a surprise.
It'll be interesting for me to see if he's developed the self-belief. To me, that's always under pressure was always his weakness, as it were. Certainly talent isn't, but does he believe he can beat Eli Tomac, Dylan Ferrandis, Cairoli, even a Dungey or Jason Anderson outdoors in the heat in the last 2 laps of a moto when it really, really matters? Does he believe and does he have the fitness to do that? But I think speed-wise on a practice track, he certainly shouldn't be far away from those guys. And I think that 450 Yamaha suits him as well. So definitely one to keep an eye on. And for Jason Anderson, I think this is one of the first years he's come into outdoors with huge motivation to try and win it, or at least win an overall for the first time. The form he's ended Supercross in, he seems to be having fun as well, which in a long season is probably pretty important. And if he gets out to a good start outdoors, he might be a bit of a sneaky title contender too.
Yeah, I think
you're not convinced.
No, not to be a championship threat, I have to say, because like you said, he hasn't even won around yet, so it would be hard to imagine him, winning off to win the title. But
he could come a top 3 overall.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think he'll be consistent. I think he'll be consistently 4th, 5th, and 6th. But will that be enough to win the championship? I don't think so. But it only takes somebody like a couple of injuries and this thing will be wide open, because, after Tomac and Dylan, there's quite a lot of riders probably on the same sort of level. And obviously Crowley's probably not going to do the full championship. So, you're a couple of injuries away from a surprise championship winner, you would have to say. So you never know.
No, and of course, Joey Cevacci is his new short-term teammate. He's usually quite good outdoors, but again, he's coming off an injury on a new bike of sorts, though he has rode for that team before. So he could be another guy that could impress, or he could just be in around the top 10 all year. It's hard to say.
Yeah, well, my question to you is, Kawasaki have drafted in Cevacci, and Rockstar Husqvarna have drafted in RJ Hampshire to start the season in the 450 class. What do these teams have against Max Anstey?
I don't understand how Max Anstey hasn't got a ride either for the full US Nationals, which would make sense, even on a 250, or as a replacement for an MXGP rider. It's quite baffling. So unless there's some underlying reason or demands, I don't really know, because we know he's actually relatively consistent anyway, but he can always produce a good moto where he'll start up front, run on the top three for a while or whatever, which is great for sponsors. He's obviously not going to be the main factory rider for any of those teams in America anyway. So as a backup factory rider, which he would be, I mean, he's better outdoors than Shane McElrath, I would say, but maybe they're looking at McElrath as more a long-term indoor guy. It's hard to say really, but no Anstey's coming into outdoors of all things. You'd maybe understand it better if it was the other way around, coming into Supercross, but outdoors is kind of where he's shown the most speed in America.
Yeah, well, I do know a few months ago that Factory Kawasaki and MXGP did make him an offer as a fill-in rider, but I think he rejected that, probably because he wants to stay in America and he thought he'd get a good AMA ride.
Well, I think he was nearly at Kawasaki, and then that.
Yeah.
So maybe he thought that was happening, and then it isn't happening.
Yeah.
And then...
But I think Cevacci's knee wasn't as bad as they thought, so they went for him. But for me, that's strange because, like you said, if it was Supercross, you maybe understand. But to be fair to Max, he hasn't been that far off than Dean Wilson in Supercross.
Oh, he's been solid.
And he's going to be a much better motocross rider than Dean Wilson. And Husqvarna have decided to get McElrath and promote RJ Hampshire for the start of the season too. For me, Max Anstey would have made perfect sense, but there you go. And what's your thoughts on RJ Hampshire starting the season on a 450?
Well, I thought he was doing that, and then I thought already he would stay on 250. So in the press release, so I'm not quite sure where he's even going to ride. Although the way RJ rides, I'm not sure he knows where he's riding either. Times he can be all over the place.
I thought RJ was going to be riding on the 450.
Well, I think Malcolm's coming back after 6 rounds.
Yeah, starting the season. I mean,
yeah. Well, RJ Hampshire will probably be the same whatever bike he's on. Fast, exciting, and really, really rash, and probably crash. So
yeah,
he's always one to keep an eye on.
It'd definitely scare me on a 450, like, so he would.
Well, yeah. Well, maybe it'll smooth him out. Look at Ruben Fernandez. He was pretty wild on a 250, and he's actually riding a 450 really, really well. So it might actually have the opposite effect to what we were thinking.
Yeah, perhaps. Although in Fernandez's case, I think he had to push his bikes he was riding to stay with those guys. Yeah. I mean, RJ's had one of the best bikes in the 250, and he still rides pin. But yeah, it'll be interesting. You never know.
Yeah, he likes to ride the edge, that man. And never really seems to know he is riding the edge, no matter how many times he crashes in every moto. It's a bit bizarre, but he is fast.
Yeah, he is.
That'll lead us. Well, we'll probably talk about Barsha first before we go to the 250 class. I'm not really sure where to put Barsha. I'm not even sure if there'll be any revenge from all the riders he's knocked down. I mean, if somebody knocks him down at the top of one of those hills, it could hurt. He's actually usually quite good outdoors, but I'm just not sure. He's usually in around 3rd to 5th in the championship if he manages the whole series. He's secretly consistent, Justin Barsha, despite his wild riding.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I have no idea where Barsha will finish at the first round, to tell you the honest truth. But yeah, he is sneaky consistent, isn't he? So 3rd to 6th in the championship was, if he lost the season, it's probably where he's going to finish. You could probably put Anderson sort of the same, but injuries are going to come into it, so it'll be hopefully the majority of the riders can stay fit and we can see a good AMA national season. But the problem is with the AMA riders, even if they pick up a knock, because Supercross is the main priority there, even if they could finish the season, a lot of them just decide not to take their time off and then come back and focus on Supercross. So it will be interesting, but hopefully the majority of them can stay injury free and we can see a good season.
And that'll be the interesting thing with Tomac. It looks like he's Supercross only next year.
Yeah.
But he might have a slight knee injury. But then this could mean it's his last outdoor season and his last chance at an outdoor title. So will he prioritize the outdoor title because it's his last one? Or will, if this knee keeps playing up, will he go, right, I really want to win what could be his last ever Supercross title next year? So we might actually see just how much this outdoor title is a priority with Tomac and a few other riders come round 7, 8, depending on how the title's going.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, yeah, I think it'll depend on how he's feeling. and how much pain he's in. Obviously, he's in pain and he needs operation or anything like that. Supercross will be the priority, but I feel like it won't get that bad. But because he is back on the bike preparing, so it mustn't be too bad. It's not like he's coming into the first round with a couple of days on the bike. I think he's had a couple of weeks to prepare after missing the last Supercross round, so I feel like he'll be okay. But also with this being his potentially his last AMA national season, it could potentially be his last Motocross the Nations at Red Bud in his home crowd too.
He
So
wants revenge there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So. He probably still has nightmares about Jeffrey Hurlings, and so
he'll probably be quite glad Jeffrey Hurlings isn't going to be riding by the looks of things this year, because I don't think I'll ever forget Jeffrey's heat race at Red Bud. Went down in the first corner, took time getting up and everything as well. Came from last and was about to pass Tomac for, I think, third in what was a 20-minute race, and Tomac's bike blew up. But the ride for the level Hurlings was on that moto was absolutely phenomenal, so they won't have him to deal with.
Well, Pitt Barr did say this week that he's not ruling out Hurlings could come back and ride the last 2 or 3 MXGPs. Obviously, there's a long way to go. So, yeah, and then if everything goes well, which
you would imagine that record and Motocross of Nations is a motivation for him. But again, if it's going to come at the expense of 2023, you would think not. But actually,
definitely not. It's only if he's on the bike and he's feeling good and he feels he can race, he might do it. Obviously, there's a long way for that to go. But if he is back on the bike and
he can ride, it could be good testing as well for race pace for that bike that he hasn't really raced yet going into 2023. Although we're talking about Jeffrey Hurlings, I've no idea. This is the US Nationals preview, and we're going to move to 250s now. Jet Lawrence has to be the favourite, even though Justin Cooper, who pushed him all the way last year, is back on the bike from a pretty gnarly broken foot. Jeremy Martin as well. And I would add Hunter Lawrence into that equation. He may end up being Jet's biggest competition, which would be pretty cool to see two brothers, especially coming from all the way from Australia, fighting it out for a US national crown. But I think Jet has to start as favourite.
Yeah, I mean, Jet's my favourite. He won the title last year, and even last year it was actually Cooper, even though he was in more experience, he actually made the big mistake.
Washugal,
but Washugal. So that actually handed Jet the title pretty much, and Jet's a year older, a year wiser, and he's probably going to go up a level with his outdoor riding as well. So I think Jet's going to be very, very hard to beat, and also mentally and his confidence after the Supercross season he's just had. I think it's going to take something special to beat him. And yeah, I would sort of group Hunter and Justin Cooper in the same bracket going into it. I think they'll be very similar, but I think Justin will probably get the better starts in that Star Yamaha, so that could be the difference.
Yeah, I don't think if he's fit, of course, you can rule out Jeremy Martin just because he's so determined and he should get starts on that bike. But he's had trouble putting the whole championship together recently with injuries and sometimes crashes. Jet's obviously got all the momentum, and I could see Hunter, I could see those two going 1-2 if the Hondas can get out of the gate. We know the Yamahas are strong, especially outdoors as well with the power they have. But also one of the biggest interesting factors for me is going to be Austin Faulkner. He had a very tough year last year, but he's shown good speed coming back this year in Supercross. For a title, I'm not sure he'll be there because he's still having the odd up and down race. But it would be nice to see Faulkner back with the raw pace to win motos, and I think he might not be far away. But maybe that's expecting too much from him.
Yeah, well, I mean, after his season last year, you were thinking, goodness me, his career's in difficulty. So it's been nice to see him up there at Supercross again. And I would say, even though he did struggle with the Nationals last year, I would say he's probably a better motocross rider than Supercross rider. Same as
he was
same as
prior
you.
To last year.
Yeah, same exactly. So same as you. I don't think he'll challenge Jet or Hunter. I don't think he'll have their speed consistently, but I do feel like he'll be a podium guy. He'll be in that top 5 regularly, and if he can stay on consistently, and I think he will. We'll see him on the box, and then on his good day, he can maybe win a couple. But yeah, I don't think he'll be a main championship threat. But I think that would be good for Faulkner if he's just consistent in that top 5, especially when you look at him last year. I mean, he had a lot of work to do coming into the Supercross season, and it's nice to see him showcase the talent that he has and remind everybody of how talented he is.
Michael Moseman should be fast as well, but we've seen a wee bit like Faulkner. He makes mistakes, and he actually said he had a good Supercross season, which baffled me a bit because while he was fast, the mistakes ruined his championship hopes, which he should have been involved in. And I wonder if the same thing is going to happen outdoors, because he's actually a very good outdoor rider. But is he going to have these crashes again, or will he be able to sustain a challenge to put him in around that top 3, top 5 overall?
Yeah, it surprises me too. Actually, he thinks he had a good Supercross season, because for me, I thought he would have been the one guy to challenge Craig, but in the end, he was a pretty distant third, and I think Hunter was a lot better than him. But maybe he feels he's a better motocross rider, and maybe Supercross wasn't his thing before this season. Maybe that's what it comes down to. If that's the case, then he'll probably be wanting to have a better motocross season. But it's going to be difficult, with both the Lawrence brothers, Justin Cooper, then Martin. He'll probably maybe be similar to Faulkner. Maybe he hasn't quite got the pace Faulkner has, but he might have the consistency, because Faulkner does have maybe the odd more crashes than Moseman. So, but I think they'll be pretty similar maybe, and when it comes to the end of the season and for the championship.
And Joe Shimoda, usually really consistent, except this year, quite inconsistent. So outdoors will be a bit of a test for him to see if he can rebound to become what he used to be, a consistent, solid rider in and around that mid top 10 usually. Or will he still try to push the edge and out of anger of a Supercross season and try to get podiums and even try and go for this outdoor title? Mitch Payton hasn't had a lot of luck with titles lately. Used to be the team to beat. Seth Hamaker as well, really good indoor rider, a little bit improving thanks to illness and injury outdoors. And I think Jet Reynolds might be racing as well, but again, a rookie, so he's going to have raw speed, but will he have the fitness and the consistency? So quite a lot of question marks around that whole PC Kawasaki team. And also Cameron McAdoo kind of falls into that area as well. He's quick, kind of top 5, but will he have the consistency to really challenge for podiums week in, week out in the series?
Yeah, and then another rider is Swoll. He actually won a round last season, which I think everybody sort of forgets about. Yeah. But he'll be one to watch, because I think he's still quite young, and he'll be wanting to improve and have a better season than he did last year. I think it will be tricky for him to win another round, but you never know.
And what about Nate Thrasher? He's absolutely bewildering at times. He can get 10th one week and then just go out and win a East-West shootout on a 250 against Anderson and Craig, or Lawrence and Craig. Outdoors again, he's quite unknown, but he could have a moto of magic where he just runs top 3 and nearly wins a moto as well. It's not going to be hard to call where he goes. He should be starting to get the consistency now. He's had a couple of years in that team. Yeah,
exactly. He's had a lot of hype, but I mean, so far, I would still say we're waiting for him to live up to that hype, because like you said, maybe one moto he'd be really, really good, and then the next moto he'd be 15th, and you're sort of scratching your head. So I think for him it's important to improve his consistency, and try and get these top 5s. But like I alluded to earlier, it is going to be tricky, because the top 5 is pretty quick with both Lawrence's, Martin, and Justin Cooper. I think everybody sort of sees them as the main 4, and it's going to be difficult to get in there and rustle a few fellers, but you never know. Thrasher is probably the one that he might have the raw speed. He might even be a raw speed quicker than Faulkner, but he's even more inconsistent than Faulkner probably. Yeah. So he'll be looking to sort that out.
Right. So championship predictions. For me, it's hard to look past Tomac and Jet Lawrence, as boring as that may sound. What about you?
Well, then I'll be different. I'll say Dylan Ferrandis. I really don't want to disagree with you on Jet Lawrence, because I think a mixture of Cooper and Lawrence. Oh dear,
probably the ideal rider. They're a good starter, and then
I really don't want to disagree with Jet Lawrence, but I'll be different. And I'll go Hunter.
So what you're saying is you don't even agree with your own picks? Really?
Yeah, I'm just being different because I don't want to be boring.
Yeah, I
Dylan,
think
I could see. I think Dylan has a good chance of winning it. If anything happens, Eli. So
yeah, I think start wise, might hurt Dylan because I think he might be the closest in pace.
Mm.
And I'm also still not convinced about Tomac's knee if he catches it somewhere. But if you predict on the fact that nothing like that will happen, I still think it's hard to look past Eli. Tomac as good as Dylan Ferrandis can go, because when Eli hits that turbo mode in the last 5 or 10 minutes, maybe only a Cairoli 5-10 years ago and Jeffrey Hurlings currently could stay with him, although current Tim Geiger might have a shot, even in America. But he's not going to be racing, so that was a bit of unless, of course,
you've got yourself all excited.
Unless, of course, he rides Red Bud Nations, but we don't even know about that.
Yeah, exactly.
With Slovenia.
We kind of went off track there, but I'll say Ferrandis and Hunter. Right, 2 XGP brilliant. Riders I'm going with.
You've given 2 riders you even believe can win the title in your picks, so that went
well.
No,
I believe Dylan can, and I'm going Hunter, Team Hunter.
Don't know if I really believe that, but anyway, we'll wait and see. 50th year of the US Nationals, probably one of the most exciting of those 50. And I think the Cairoli Dungey performances are going to be as intriguing as Eli Tomac versus Dylan for the title, or can it be Cairoli and Dungey battling for a title? In 6 weeks' time, we might have more answers to those questions. But only something to look forward to. 1 week to go, US Nationals. Of course, it's the Spanish Grand Prix as well, so that'll be a busy weekend and a lot of action. And can't wait for it.
Ciao.